Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of Scott's Selections over Friday, November 22nd. Before we get into today's play of the day, quick recap of what happened yesterday. We ended up picking up a play of the day loss with the Colts money line at plus 166. We got a good number on it. The game was extremely close. For a plus 166 underdog, that's about as close as you can get to a win without actually getting it. I thought the Colts dominated pretty much the entire game in the terms of the turnover differential, the line of scrimmage they dominated in just time of possession as well. The only issue is that the Colts decided to just not cover DeAndre Hopkins a couple times. Very bold move to say the least, and the Colts ended up covering the spread, but they ended up losing the game, which is unfortunate, but when you're betting on underdogs for the money line for the value, and they end up covering the spread, I'd say that the analysis wasn't that far off. I mean, the Colts easily could have won that game, but they simply just lack of game-breaking talent on offense. T.Y. Hilton was supposed to come back, and he did, and he's killed the Texans historically, and he ended up making two crucial drops late in the game. Vinatieri made all his kicks. I can't even get mad at Vinatieri. Jacoby Brissett, though, that pass defense for the Texans is so bad, and yet the Colts did absolutely nothing to exploit it the entire game. It was maddening. I know that they were running the ball well with Jonathan Williams, and I get that they were able to dominate the line of scrimmage, but at the end of the day, you have to take some shots downfield. I mean, T.Y. is one of the fastest players in the league. I know he's coming off injury, but the Texans' secondary is completely banged up, which is a huge reason why I bet on the Colts in the first place. And then they proceeded to throw no passes down the field, and I'm pretty sure Brissett's longest completion of the entire game was roughly 14 yards. You gotta, I don't know what was going on there, but the Colts probably should have won. They didn't make enough plays late. You could argue about the fumble from Watson late in the fourth. Do I think it mattered? No. I think the Colts had chances to win. I think they pretty much blew it. And Brissett scrambling on 4th and 8 to pick up 7 yards wasn't exactly the play call that I had in mind. But overall, it is what it is. However, if you did follow me on Twitter, I did give out a winner on that in college basketball, as I ended up giving out UConn -3. So occasionally I'll post some stuff on Twitter with regard to some plays or some statistics that I think could potentially play a factor in some college basketball or some other sports matchups. If you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me at Reichel Radio, and I will give out some, I would say additional picks, but they're not really picks. I'm not counting towards a record or anything. They're mostly just leans. But I had some money on UConn -3 against Buffalo, and they were able to win that game pretty easily after a very close first half. So, other than that, though, decent day, dealt with some of the damage from the Colts. But we'll look to bounce back for a winner today in college football on Friday. A lot of games to go over here, as a lot of day games for college basketball because of some various tournaments in Jamaica and the Bahamas and Charleston, pretty much all over the place. But in terms of the play of the day, it will actually be on a home game that is not involved in a tournament, and it will be between South Carolina and Gardner-Webb, and we actually like South Carolina -15, which is available on DraftKings at -110. Now, this game, and people in college basketball, when it comes to betting, tend to overreact to specific performances, where if a team gets absolutely embarrassed in the game before, they think that this team is just overrated, this team's not any good, and this team's going to fall apart. I disagree with that. I actually believe it depends on the spots, it depends on the coach, and I think that if a team gets embarrassed at home in their last game, I think some teams could easily turn that into a bounce-back spot, as they will be extremely motivated to give this game everything they have. And I think South Carolina falls under that category. South Carolina started the season out 3-0, with each of their wins coming by at least 22 points. Did they play any good teams? No. They played North Alabama, they played Wyoming, and they played Cleveland State, and they won each of those games by at least 22 points. However, in their last game, they lost outright at home in a bye game to Boston University. Very poor loss there, lost by 8 points outright. So now people immediately think that South Carolina's trash because they lost to Boston, and they completely ignore the fact that they dominated the first 3 teams they played on their schedule this season. Meanwhile, Gardner-Webb is 0-4 overall. They're 0-3 on the road. If you look at their record, they lost to Furman by 7, they lost to Western Carolina by 12, they lost to North Carolina by 16, and they lost to Wichita State by 22. Overall, Gardner-Webb stinks, and South Carolina definitely will give this game everything they have because of the fact that I think the coaching staff with Coach Martin, I think he realizes how much of a no-show the team actually had in their last game at home, and I think that he will be poised to get his players motivated for this game as they will look for a bounce-back performance at home. Plus, in terms of the statistics, I just think South Carolina is the much better overall team. When I look at the matchup here, it reminds me a lot of the play of the day winner we had a couple of days ago between San Francisco and Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois simply was just awful on the boards, and we knew San Francisco would dominate and clean up the glass, get some second chance point opportunities. And that's the same case with this game. South Carolina right now is averaging 17 more points per game. They're averaging 75.8 points per game. Gardner-Webb's averaging 58.8. Gardner-Webb's giving up 73 points per game. South Carolina's giving up 57 points per game. Field goal percentage, South Carolina is shooting a very underwhelming 41.9% from the floor. However, Gardner-Webb is actually shooting 38.4% of the floor, but the main reason why we think there's a huge disadvantage for Gardner-Webb is based on the rebounding differential. Gardner-Webb is averaging 30 rebounds per game, and South Carolina is averaging 44.3. I think South Carolina is going to dominate the reboundings, on the glass. I think they're going to be able to get a ton of second chance points. Are they a great free throw shooting team as a whole? No. However, South Carolina's starters are actually decent from the foul line. It's the bench players that can't hit a free throw to save their lives, which is a bit concerning, but I think the starters should be able to open up a big lead in the first half. I think they'll be able to open up a big lead throughout the entire game, and I think you should see South Carolina eventually win this game by about 20. And I think that South Carolina is in a very good spot here for a bounce back after losing to Boston at home outright and having to think about that for about 2.5 days. And now they get to return to action at home against one of the worst teams in D1. I think South Carolina will win this game handily, and I think the spread should be closer to 17 or 18 rather than 15. So the play of the day will be on South Carolina minus 15, which is available on DraftKings at minus 110. Now for the rest of the college basketball card, I'll give out my leans on some of the college football and the NBA games, but today is a very good day for college basketball. You start out with your games, you wake up in the morning, and you see multiple day games between Liberty and Morgan State and Nicholls State, all these teams, and even if you don't care about it, it has a certain appeal to it of kind of like a conference tournament where you wake up, you don't really know what the hell's going on, but you know that there's something on TV throughout the entire day, which is definitely a nice change of pace dealing with the sports world. But for today's games, I'm a huge fan of the over in the Eastern Kentucky and Florida International game. It's at 164.5. I'm going to bet it myself. That game starts in about an hour and 20. I thought about giving that out as play of the day, but based on the fact that I'm making the video now, there wasn't enough time for it. Florida International plays at a top 10 pace, and Eastern Kentucky also plays at a top 10 pace. This game could have 200 points in it. It should have at least 180. I'll lean to the over there. And I will tell you right now, I will definitely bet this game personally, but it will not be on my play of the day record. But I definitely would lean to the over on that one. Looking at the rest of the card here, what do I like here? I'll lean to Baylor minus 10 here against Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina put in a solid performance yesterday, but Baylor, they play a zone defense most of the time. Coastal Carolina doesn't have any days to prepare for it, as they had to play yesterday as well. Baylor won a pretty easy day game against Ohio yesterday. I think they'll come out and smack Coastal Carolina in the mouth. They're a more physical team. They're a better defensive team. And I think Baylor should win this game by double digits. Lean to Baylor on that one. Looking at the rest of the card, what do I like here? The Utah State LSU game is interesting. I would lean to Utah State, but it is going to be on a neutral, and I know that LSU ended up playing on a neutral in a tournament last year, so I question, just how prepared Utah State will be for playing away from home. But I don't think Keita's back yet. Nobody really knows if he's going to be back for Utah State. I love this Utah State team. I mentioned it before. LSU's lost a game this season, was on the road against a ranked VCU team. Definitely not a bad loss. And I think LSU might have the better athletes, but at the end of the day, I think Utah State should dominate the boards, and I think Utah State should get the win. It'll be very close. I think Utah State will win by 4. Lean to Utah State on that one. Other than that, though, what else do I like? Just looking. There's a lot of games to go through. I'm just trying to see if I find anything that I actually enjoy. No, it's pretty much looking like it's it. I would lean to the under 136.5 between Oregon and Houston. This line's taken a dive from 138 to 136.5. I would take it now. It has gone down to 136 flat in some spots offshore. So if you want to take it now, 136.5, you probably can, as that line should probably close around 135. I think you can get some value from that. so I would lean to the under on that one. UConn got us a win yesterday. They play Xavier today. Xavier is -5. Totals in bet up from 133 to 136.5. I'd lean to the over there. Pretty questionable line movement as a whole. I think that's sharp money because I don't really know why any of the public would be betting the over in a 9:30 game between UConn and Xavier. It's pretty random. I think that's definitely a sharp money. I would lean to the over there. And Connecticut, as I mentioned on Twitter, is a fantastic free throw shooting team. They capitalize on their opportunities. And Xavier is a pretty solid offensive team as well. I think that game could get into the 140s. I think both teams could get into the 70s. Lean to the over on that one. Now, switching gears, talking about college football. You have two games. You have Central Arkansas versus Incarnate Word. Pass. I'm not touching that game. I know anything about both teams. I'm not going to bother. Then you have Wyoming versus Colorado State. Money's come in on the under, as you have seen it drop from 51 to... Actually, it's kind of a split line. You have 51.5 at some spots, so you've seen money to the over, but then some books have just 50.5, or it stayed flat. So it's a bit inconsistent. So the line for the most part stayed the same, but money has come in on Colorado State. It has dropped from Wyoming -7 to -5.5. I think if you're going to lean based on a line movement, you should lean to Colorado State. Wyoming is a very interesting team because they love to run the ball. They're not really good at throwing the ball, but Colorado State's defense is terrible. They did give Air Force a decent run for their money before that pick six in the final 2 minutes of regulation, which made the game look more lopsided than it actually was. I don't really have many thoughts on this game. I would lean to the under 51, but that's a very tentative lean. I'm not going to play anything personally on that game. Those are just my thoughts. Lean to the under. Other than that, looking at looking at the NBA, you have some matchups that I find interesting. You have the Lakers versus the Thunder. Interestingly, the Lakers just beat the Thunder earlier this past week, but the line's only at 4. The game's in Oklahoma City. This line looks very interesting to me. Would I go against the Lakers? No. There has been some questions regarding Anthony Davis' status and whether or not he would take the day off. I'm actually going to lean to Oklahoma City here. It might sound crazy, but I think the Lakers being -4 speaks volumes. And I think Oklahoma City, as you have seen this season, has been much better at home than they have been on the road. Chris Paul was pretty much a complete no-show in the last game against the Lakers. I think he'll bounce back. I'll lean to Oklahoma City. I think this game will be close. I think the Lakers could win, but I definitely think that this line being so short as it is looks like a complete trap because you know that the public will be slamming the Lakers as much as possible. Lean to Oklahoma City on that one. What else do I like? I'll lean to the under 208 between the Jazz and the Warriors. Warriors just gave up 140-something points to the Mavericks earlier this week. Utah as a whole is a very solid defensive team. They don't like to run the floor. Golden State has pretty much every one of their key players injured. It's a low total in today's NBA. I'll still lean to the under. I think if this game has to go over, I think Utah has to score at least 120, 130, and I don't really think Utah is going to be pressed to run up the score in the fourth quarter. I'll lean to the under. I think this game should end somewhere in the realm of maybe 110 to, maybe 90 or so. I don't think Golden State's going to break 100. I'll lean to the under. Looking at the rest of the card, though, what do I like here? I don't really like anything in terms of the card here. If you want an underdog pick in terms of value, I would take the Atlanta Hawks on the money line against Detroit. Atlanta's fallen apart the last couple of weeks. Detroit's not much better, and I think Atlanta has the ability to win this game if they're able to keep Drummond off of the boards, which is very tough to do. But I think Trae Young should be able to dominate anybody who's guarding him on the perimeter, and I think Atlanta's team isn't very good in terms of talent, but they're feisty, and they fight with heart, and I respect that. I think Atlanta has the ability to win this game. Detroit at home, I know it's home court. Detroit's just not that good. I don't think this game really means much in terms of home court advantage. I think Atlanta could easily win this game. I think this game will be close. It will be ugly as both teams tend to turn the ball over a lot, but I think Trae Young is a danger to take over any game at any time, and Detroit doesn't really have any great defenders on the perimeter, so I think Trae Young should be able to play well. So, in terms of the play of the day, though, it will be on South Carolina, -15, which is available at -110 on DraftKings, as they take on Gardner-Webb at 7 p.m. Eastern Time in college basketball. Other than that, though, that's going to be this installment of Scott Selections here for Friday, November 22nd, and good luck to all of you and your respective bets today. Bye, everyone.